Namaste, everyone. Thank you for tuning in this afternoon for our session on yoga and sports, kicking it off calmly. My name is Sangeeta, and I'm pleased to welcome you all to the Hindu Experience Students Edition 2020, a conference bringing together eminent Hindu professionals and young students. The conference aims to explore a variety of themes and seeks to inspire our audience to propel their potential. National Hindu Students Forum UK has been effecting change at university campuses and beyond for almost 3 decades now, reaching students across the country with the core aim of developing future role models across all spheres of society. This is NHSF's first virtual conference and marks an important milestone in our history. Today, we are here to discuss whether yoga and sports is really immiscible. Our guest speaker will enlighten us with her journey in sports, the challenges faced, and will then move on to how yoga comes into play and its benefits. Everyone, it's an honor to present to you today Prashaanta Singh, today all the way from Trinidad and Tobago. She is 23 years old and is currently studying to be a doctor of dental surgery. She is an active member of Hindu Swamsevak Sangh and Hindu Prachar Kendra. Prashaanta is a two-time under 18s national champion in archery with a national record. She's also a black belt from a renowned Japanese master and has won a medal for Trinidad and Tobago in the Pan American Karate Championship. She was awarded the most outstanding karateka and won 10 gold medals, 7 silver and 1 bronze. She's also a trained lifeguard and has been learning Indian Odissi dance since the age of 2. Prashaanta, welcome to the Hindu Experience Students Edition 2020. Before we get into conversation, I'd just like to remind you all that if you have any questions for Prashaanta during our conversation, you can ask them on the YouTube live chat below. Prashaanta, namaste, and it's great to have you on board. Perhaps you could start off by telling us a bit about how you got into the field of sports in the first place.
So initially what happened was my parents, they decided that my brother was around the right age, 5 or 6, to start learning archery and karate. And at first they initiated him into doing karate. And then my parents, they asked me, do you want to do it as well? And without thinking twice as a 9-year-old, I said, of course. And then a few years later, they started him in an archery class. And then they asked me again, do you want to do archery as well? And I said, of course. And at that age, all I thought from between 9 to 12 years old was that if he can do it, so can I. Because I was always feminine from young. So my parents were definitely shocked that I decided to take up sports. But I'm glad I did.
Lovely. And in terms of your confidence, obviously, to be able to say, yes, you also want to do it, where did you get that from?
So I drew my confidence from the legends that I look up to. I grew up with them. From a young age, my parents and my family in general, they encouraged me to look at the Ramayana or Mahabharata on television or read short stories on it. So from young age, I was groomed that if there is any issue that you have related to either the Ramayana or the Mahabharata. And I saw that happening a lot to me when I was competing. On some days I would feel like such a complete failure, or I didn't believe in myself. And I will always think that my problems were so big. But then I would look at the life story of Sri Ram, from him being exiled to having his wife kidnapped and having to fight Ravan. And then I would think back, seriously, my problem isn't half as big as I thought it was. It would definitely humble me on what I thought was a huge problem. Not only that, in the Mahabharata, the Pandavas were at war with the Kauravas. And when the Pandavas, when they went to war, they had far less resources as well as support And I saw that happening to me a lot. There were many times when I wasn't half as skilled as my competitor, or that person had more advanced technology than me. So at first I would be disheartened, but then I would remember that the Pandavas won the fight against the Kauravas while they faced a bigger problem and almost the exact same problem as myself. So I would think if they can win an entire war, then winning is also a possibility for me.
That's great. The stories of the Ramayana and Mahabharata, you've actually thought about how you can learn from them and put them as part of your daily life. Excellent. Um, Growing up, in particular for myself, so I used to play sports and it was football for me, but I found that there were many challenges being a young Hindu girl. Is this something that you kind of faced in the sports field? And did you find that you had to work harder because of it?
Absolutely. As long as you compete, discrimination is a must. And I had three reasons why I could be easily discriminated against. I am a Hindu Indian female. With that alone, instead of focusing on discrimination, instead I channeled all my energies towards being the best I could be at a competition. So much so that those who disliked me were forced to respect me. So, my advice to others would be to work and develop on your skills. Respect and attention would come afterwards.
Perfect. That's absolutely great. So it's like that saying, isn't it? You're in competition with nobody but yourself, and just focusing on yourself to really make sure that you kind of grow and you're the best that you can, and not to worry about what everybody else is doing. Excellent. Okay. Could you tell us a bit about, obviously, so you've managed to get to both national level with your archery and championship level with your karate, all whilst studying and being a student. So can you tell us a bit about how you managed your time and how you kind of did that?
Okay, so based on my own experience, as is everything that I will be saying, let me just clarify from now that it's of whatever I experienced as an individual. It's not what I read. So I was able to balance both studying and competing by having clarity of my goal and blending yoga into my training, as well as having discipline. By clarity of goal, I mean I had to know what I want and go after it no matter what. I would prepare for an international competition 1 year ahead of time and a national competition 3 months before. I had to give myself sufficient time to become so prepared I was the best that I could possibly be on the day I compete. I also incorporated yoga asanas into my training. So before I prepped for competition, 20 minutes before time, I would schedule time to warm up the Surya Namaskar. And then I would also use the same Surya Namaskar yoga asanas to do a cool down process,
Mm-hmm.
as well as discipline. If you want to achieve a lot of things in life, discipline is a must. You have to know what you want. You have to plan it out. In my case, I always scheduled a time twice a day to do sadhana and one time to do yoga. Doing sadhana definitely helped me to reach where I am today.
Mm-hmm. No, sure. So waking up at, I'm just looking at your timetable that we've got on the screen, waking up at 3 a.m., and you've got something there called practicing sadhana. And you've also got yogasana, and I can see you've got sadhana in there twice, 2 slots in the day. So could you explain what sadhana is perhaps, and enlighten us about how you did that in the morning and in the evenings on a daily basis?
Okay, so I did sadhana based on those times of the days because after those times, after sunrise and before sunset, it was extremely hot in my country. So trying to focus and do sadhana became a near impossibility. Sadhana was the tool that I used to facilitate balancing my entire life. I would do it twice a day, sitting on a chair with my palms upwards, my right hand on top of my left, keeping a straight spine, I would close my eyes and focus on one mantra, chanting it rapidly. Not only that, any other thoughts that would come into my mind at that time, I would remove it as soon as is possible. This gave me 1 hour in my entire day to just neglect any external issues that I was having and focus on my own inner development. Not only that, I saw that from a young age, I was taught yoga, and my teachers, they always emphasized on stretching. So when I was going to mandir or Hindu Swamseva camps, one of the first things they did was Surya Namaskar. So from a young age, because I knew so much about Surya Namaskar and yoga, every time my teachers in my respective fields would say, you need to stretch before you do this, or you need to stretch after you do this, I thought, well, why not use the knowledge that I know and incorporate it into my routine? So instead of loosely stretching, I would stretch with more awareness and therefore do yoga instead.
So you kind of took that yoga beyond the stretching aspect and incorporated it to help you sort of spiritually and mentally to focus. Brilliant. Okay, so can you tell us a bit more about how yoga helped you as an athlete and why you think it's so important?
So first of all, yoga has its benefits as an individual. As an individual, while I was doing sadhana as well as incorporating yoga, mentally I was more calm, disciplined, and focused. And that was essential because it would make me have little to no stress. I also thought myself falling into a very productive, healthy routine by incorporating yoga and sadhana. And it also helped me cope with mental illnesses as an athlete because sometimes training can become extremely intense. And I remember this one incident in karate class. I was fighting against one of my colleagues, and no matter how many rounds of fighting I did, I could not seem to properly attack him or defend myself. So much so that with each round that I went through, I slowly felt myself lose faith in my capabilities. That while on about my fifth time fighting him, I just fell to the floor and broke down in tears. And my sensei, he saw that and he stopped the fight. He gave me words of encouragement and he sent me home. When I went home, I did my sadhana, I did yoga, and then I went back to the dojo the very next day and was training as if that incident never happened. Not only that, I found that once I incorporated sadhana and yoga into my life, I became more efficient. I would do a larger volume of work in a shorter period of time. And before doing physical yoga asanas, I did sadhana, and it made me become more mentally prepared and ready to do physical yoga asanas. In terms of the physical aspects of yoga, it gave me great flexibility. There was a point in time when doing a split was so impossible for me. And after years of doing yoga, I can happily say I can do a split with little to no discomfort. And then, of course, when you're an athlete, sometimes you overthink about competition that's going to happen the very next day. So on those nights where I was overthinking too much, I would roll out my yoga mat, do some yoga asanas, and eventually fall asleep in Shavasana. Not only that, but I also noticed that yoga made me become more aware of my body. When I was doing yoga, I would notice any slight changes in my body, from the tension in some muscles to the relaxation in others.
And do you have any examples of how you used yoga or sadhana whilst you were in competition?
Yeah, I do actually. So when I was in competition, not only did I incorporate yoga and sadhana, but Hindu dharma as well. And what I did was that I incorporated them, especially sadhana, because it helped me reduce the stress of competitions. I had that 1 hour in 24 entire hours to just focus on no problems. And it was quite a relief for me. It also mentally prepared me for upcoming competitions because once I knew I had a competition coming up, my thinking changed. To me, it was not just a competition, it was preparation for a war. And if I had to go to war, I had to become the best soldier out there. So I would definitely incorporate sadhana as well. Additionally, I saw that sadhana helped me during very grueling circumstances. There was this one point in time in an archery competition. During the competition, my bow malfunctioned. That is every archer's worst nightmare. But my one was 10 nightmares in one because my bow was malfunctioning to a great extent that continuing to compete would have been a near impossibility. What I did instead was focus internally. Before I shoot any arrow, I would close my eyes, I would chant a mantra, and then I would go ahead, pull the bow, and execute. What I did was that I transformed chanting into a means to channel my own inner energy to help me out with archery. Because physically, with damaged equipment, it was becoming really difficult for me. So that arrow that was shot with a mantra was my equivalent to offering samadhi into a oven. So it was no longer just an arrow for me, it was prasad. I also developed together with my family mantras for codes because during competitions, many people would get very agitated or irritated when I would speak to my own parents. So we realized we couldn't speak English anymore. So we started to take on mantras because it was what we knew. So a good example is I would use the mantra Om Namah Shivaya. Om meaning one technique that I was weak on, that I know I need to focus on. Nama, another technique, and Shivaya, another technique. So whenever my parents or my brother would say Om Namah Shivaya, in my head, not only was I thinking about Bhagwan Shiva, I was also relating it to my weaknesses so that it made me shoot better by continuously reminding myself of what I needed to focus on in a competition. Another code that we used was Arjuna Chap. In an archery competition, you have 3 arrows to shoot each round. And there is this story in the Mahabharata where Arjuna, he had 1 arrow to shoot the bird's eye. It was hit and miss for him. And I had to incorporate that own thinking into me. So every arrow I shot, I had to treat it like it was the very last arrow. Therefore, I definitely had to make it count. Each arrow had to be worth an Arjuna chap and nothing less. Not only that, but there is also the fact that doing sadhana, yoga, and incorporating Hindu values helped me increase my level of humility. I know without a doubt that I would not be here unless I stood on the shoulders of giants. And those giants are everyone that supported me, my parents, my guru, Bhagwan, and of course my teachers. I don't know of much athletes who were able to reach their highest potential while carrying the burden of their own ego. If you need to learn, then you have to be open to your own mistakes and be ready to learn from those younger than you as well as older than you. And I had to incorporate that into my own life. What I would do after I won trophies and medals in respective competitions, I would offer it to my teacher, I would offer it to my parents, bow at their feet, and then I would offer it to the Devastan and sit down and do sadhana. Because how I saw it was I was simply the channel through which it was possible to achieve, but I only got that opportunity because I had all this help behind me. It was a complete group effort, not just me alone. And of course, incorporating these Hindu values, such as before a competition or after I've mounted my bow, I would bow to my bow. I would not let my feet touch my bow. And in karate, before I put on the belt around my waist, I would chant a mantra, bow at it, and then put it around. It gave it more meaning to me, more significance, knowing that this wasn't just a belt. This was an entire tradition being backed up by this belt. It was merely a symbol. And then there is the physical aspect of yoga, which incorporated a lot of flexibility. When I first started off karate, my kicks were about 5 feet high. And after doing yoga for so long, my kicks are 6 feet and beyond, and that is always a plus. Also, I realized that on the days that I really did not want to train, I would incorporate some yoga into the routine. I'd think to myself, okay, I may not want to train today, but at least let me do some yoga asanas. And getting out of bed, doing yoga asanas, eventually I would mentally work myself up to go outside and train for the necessary upcoming competitions. And then there were days where it was just so exhausting coming out of bed. I was so sore from training that happened last day or the day before that. So I would use yoga to relax as well as soothe aching muscles. And moreover, I always had an issue with speed in karate. So what I started to do was speed up how I performed the Surya Namaskar. And by increasing the pace that I performed it, I was able to increase my strength and speed in karate, which is necessary when you're fighting.
Lovely. It's great to see that you've been able to incorporate not just the Hindu values and the sanskars that we learn into your daily life and into your life as an athlete, and that it's not just yoga and sports that go hand in hand, but it's also those very basic Hindu principles that we live and abide by and that we get taught, but you've been able to put them as part of your daily practice. I think for a lot of us here in the UK, we always complain that we don't have time. I know I definitely do, and I'm sure there's a lot of others. As students, we get a bit lazy. We want to relax and enjoy ourselves. So in terms of practicing yoga and sadhana, what would be your tips for trying to start off with it? Like how would we go about it and incorporate it slowly into our lives?
I think you should start off first by mentally preparing yourself to do it. So continuously thinking about a thought brings about an action. That's how I went about doing it as such. I was like, okay, today I'm going to do yoga. I'm definitely going to do yoga. I'll roll out the mat. I am going to do yoga. I am doing yoga now. So from thought, it go to action, and you build yourself up because we all have, every one of us has 24 hours in a day. It's how we utilize it that builds either our strengths and weaknesses.
Yes, no, definitely. So I guess small baby steps and really trying to just practice it regularly, even though it's for a short amount of time to begin with. Excellent. And do you have any tools or anything like that in terms of for sadhana? I think that's quite a new concept or something that some of us might be hearing for the first time. So how would we, if we wanted to look into it a bit more, do you have any sort of maybe links on or internet or book or anything that you'd recommend for the students to kind of go away and maybe look into a bit further?
Yeah. So when I first started off sadhana, I didn't sit down and meditate right away. What my parents did was work me up to that point. So they started off with japa, and every morning and every afternoon, I would have to chant continuously with the beats. And then afterwards, they said, okay, you need to sit down and meditate. And I went from doing 5 minutes all the way to 30 minutes. It's a gradual process. Every month, you take 1 minute more. So 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes until you're most comfortable. And the idea is to keep increasing the amount of sadhana that you do because it definitely does help you all around in life and help you bloom into the flower that you were meant to be.
Mm-hmm. No, sure. So starting off with some japa, so sort of repeating a shlok or a mantra you know, the Gayatri Mantra, something like that, would you say, where you kind of repeat it non-stop and just keep on going and then slowly increase the amount of time?
Absolutely. That's how I started off. So, and it works for me. If anyone finds another way, then it's whatever you're most comfortable with. There are so many options in Hindu dharma that even if you don't like japa or chanting, you can simply sit down and chant bhajans and kirtans. But eventually, you want to work your way up to doing sadhana for a longer period of time.
Sure, that's great. So I think it's definitely made me think that, okay, anyone can do this now. You don't have to know about yoga or know the different postures or know what sadhana is or necessarily even be taught it to be able to practice it. It's something that you can do quite easily by yourself.
Absolutely. It
Yeah,
just takes effort.
effort and patience. Yes, sure. In terms of, so we've spoken about yoga and sports. As an athlete, did you have to change anything differently about your diet and be disciplined with that?
Well, almost all the competitors that I knew, they were non-vegetarians. And growing up, I was always a vegetarian. So I got my protein from legumes and beans. And generally, my mom cooks such amazing dishes. And whatever she cooked, I ate. And half the times, she would be the one who would be like, okay, you know what? You need this in your diet, you need that in your diet. So I more look towards my own mom to prepare the meals for us. We all did.
Lovely. And would you say diet is something that was also equally as important as practicing your yoga, sadhana, all of that kind of stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Diet is important because you can't be eating a lot of greasy or junk foods when you are training. It makes you become sluggish. You want to try more organic foods and more homemade foods for sure.
Perfect. Okay. So let's see if we've got some questions coming in, quite a few actually, so we can move on and see if we can kind of answer some of those that the students are asking today. So we've got one question by Jinal Shah, and she says that, did you find that as a student, due to your intense routine and because you were doing different things compared to most others, that you felt like you was missing out on anything?
No, I never thought about it like that because while most of my peers were doing nothing on Saturdays, I was training in karate, archery, dancing, as well as swimming. All of my activities fell on a Saturday, and Sunday was my rest day. So I can do whatever I want, however I want. If I wanted to go out as well, I can go out then. I more saw it as an opportunity to develop myself. And I never gave in to peer pressure, which is most important when you're doing all these activities. You just want to focus on your own self development because there will come a point in time where your ability to develop internally is not as successive compared to when you're doing it at a younger, tender age.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that there'll also be a time period where, you know, the friends that you have in that moment might not necessarily be there later on in your life as well. So it's all about progressing and working on yourself so that throughout the rest of your life, you know, you're able to be that disciplined person and achieve your goals.
Yeah, I remember this quote from Sadhguru. He said, if you feel lonely, then you're in bad company. And I never thought of myself as that way. If I did not have friends, sometimes there were competitions where no one wanted to speak to me, to be honest. I would just sit there and be by myself. I was happy to be my own friend because I would much rather have no friends than have a bad friend.
I think that just goes to show as well that actually they say happiness comes from within, and, you know, not to search it in others or expect anything from others. So that's exactly that in practice, I think, that you've just summarized there. Excellent. Okay. We have another question from Sachin Jandaria, and his question is, how do you make the youth of today buy into the concept of yoga and the value that it brings into an athlete?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Sure. So how do you make the youth of today, the students, buy into the concept? So believe that the concept of yoga is really good and that, it brings a value to an athlete.
I think you just have to lead by example. You can't force anyone to do anything that they don't want to do. But if you see that incorporating yoga and sadhana or Hindu values into your daily lives helps you out so much, they will be intrigued and eventually they will lean towards it too. I've seen it happen many times in my competitions. So I'm talking about from experience here. You just have to lead by example. You do it first, and if anyone else wants to do it, they will join you.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So really kind of take that
They
concept
will.
of practice it yourself, and others will see that there's something different about her, or she's able to do this a lot more effectively or efficiently, or she's a lot more sharper when shooting the arrow, for instance, and then they will also want to kind of look into it and learn about it. Yeah. Okay. And in terms of, do you have any words out there for those that are aspiring to kind of go into the sports field or be an athlete?
My words of advice would be to never give up. Train even if you're not competing. Practice sadhana and yoga daily. Find time to have to do these sports because they will develop you holistically. And most of all, go for it with full intensity. It's about time more of us took on sports.
Sure, thank you. Next question is, can yoga help with anxiety, and where do you start with it?
Yoga can definitely help with anxiety. I would say blend both yoga and sadhana into your routine to help with anxiety because I as well experienced instances where that was happening. And knowing that for that 1 hour in my day, I could just focus on a mantra, or for that 20 minutes in my day, I could just focus on performing yoga asanas. It really helped me calm my mind. There were instances where I was too anxious to start a competition, and I would just take time, remove myself, and continuously chant a mantra. If you chant a mantra continuously, then you don't find yourself straying as much with respect to your thoughts, which is what happens when you're anxious a lot. So just focus on a mantra and repeat it rapidly.
Sure, and I guess that applies to not just being on the sports field, being an athlete when you're in competition, but also when something simple as, when you've got your exams. I'm sure a lot of our students, we get quite anxious or nervous or stressed out. So, do you agree that yoga and sadhana can also help with those?
Absolutely. Yoga and sadhana is not just for your sporting life, it's for your entire life. Practicing it daily will help you in general as a human being.
Great, that's fine. Next question. Are there any tips for getting up at 3 a.m. or getting up early in general? Do you go to bed really early in order to wake up really early?
It's a must. You can't go to bed late and expect to wake up early. I have tried and I've failed many times. Your body needs a certain amount of rest, and if it does not get that, then eventually you will crash. So the idea is to form a routine. If you know that at 6 p.m. you're going to go to sleep, start an entire hour before to prepare yourself mentally and physically to sleep. So I would do sadhana, I would shower, I would sometimes journal on my own self-development, play some relaxing music, and then go to sleep by 6 p.m.
Okay, so when you went to sleep early, you'd spend that last hour or two sort of winding down and reflecting and getting yourself ready to sort of relax and get into that state where you're ready to fall asleep early. Is that?
Yeah, it's important because you can't do something extremely hectic and then go on your bed and expect to fall asleep unless you're very exhausted. But I know most of the times, based on how I felt and how I related to it, I had to give my body and my mental health time to wind down, to relax and eventually sleep, because you can't sleep when you're agitated.
And can you sleep whilst before being on your phone for hours? Because that's something that I do, and I'm guess a lot of us students we do. We probably know it's bad for us, but do
That's
you
such
do
a
that as
bad
part of your
idea.
routine or absolutely not?
That is such a bad idea. If you know you're going to sleep by 6 p.m. for an hour and a half before that, don't go on your phone. Put it aside. Because once you go on social media or you start scrolling or you see different apps and games, your mind just becomes more and more engaged. And quite frankly, it can be addicting. And because I remember telling myself at one point in time, okay, I'm going to go to sleep at 6 o'clock. And then I would hear a notification, and an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, I went to bed at 10 p.m. So it's never a good idea to go on your phone if you know you're going to sleep. Put the
Yeah.
phone down and away from you. It's time to rest.
And I guess one thing that we can definitely see from yourself is that you're very disciplined. So how can we cultivate a bit more of that discipline into our daily lives and, you know, stop ourselves from being on our phones or help us to wake up early? How do we get that discipline?
So to wake up early, go to sleep at a specific time all the time, or try your best to. Doing sadhana and yoga will also help you prepare yourself to become more disciplined. When I had my schedule, I did it because I was doing sadhana so much. I somehow started to have specific times to do things. It was off the top of my head. I just put it in writing now because each day is different. Be
Mhm.
flexible like you are in yoga, mentally, that is. You have to know that if situations pop up, you have to be able to deal with them and go back to your schedule. Not every day will be the same, so plan accordingly.
Sure. That's excellent. I think unfortunately we are coming to the end of our time today. It's been amazing listening to you, and I'm sure we would have all loved to hear more. Before we wrap up, Prashaanta, would you like to share with us some closing remarks and any advice for either your younger self or some of our students watching today?
Advice for my younger self. I would say never give up, train no matter what, and practice sadhana and yoga daily. And for young people or those looking to get into the sport, just go for it. Jump right in and do it. Don't let anything stop you, because if you wanted it bad enough, you would accomplish it no matter what happened.
Perfect. So if you see an opportunity, make sure you seize it and really go for it. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much, Prashaanta ji. It's been really inspiring hearing from you today. I definitely, for one, feel like I need to go away and look at my daily timetable and routines and see how I can work harder and more effectively to achieve my goals. And it's also been great to debunk the myth that sports and yoga, that they don't go together, but in fact, they actually go hand in hand. And it makes a lot more sense now as to why so many athletes and sportsmen and women that we know also have started to incorporate yoga as part of their daily lives, because essentially it helps them to perform better. I'd like to take this opportunity to once again thank you, Prashaanta ji, for joining us and inspiring us all about the relationship between both yoga and sports. I hope that all the students here today have enjoyed the session. You guys can find out more about Prashaanta ji by following her on her Instagram account, which will just be coming up. There we go. So you can follow her on her Instagram account, and her email address is also there that she's kindly made available to us if any of you had further questions that we didn't get the opportunity to answer on today's session. So as I mentioned at the start of today, this is just one of the sessions that's been hosted by NHSF UK this weekend. Do join us. There are more sessions. There's one straight after this on Hindu by Sechinji Nanda, and there's also a workshop on CVs and interviews as well later on today. And there's also a jam-packed day tomorrow as well, with more panels, workshops and spotlight conversations. and there's a nice big variety of topics and something there for everyone for sure. To access all of this information and to have a look at the timetable, you can go on the NHSF website, which is www.nhsf.org.uk/these-2020 to see what else there is coming up tomorrow and to find all the links available. So Pranam, that's all for now. So Pranam and Namaste to